The air was thick with tension and resentment, as if the walls of my late husband's estate could feel the icy disdain radiating from my family. I sat in the opulent living room, my heart gripped by a mix of confusion and betrayal. Margaret, my daughter-in-law, sat across from me, her eyes alight with smug satisfaction as her laughter echoed slightly in the corners of the room. It stung like barbs in my heart as my son, Thomas, leaned closer to her and shared whispered glances that cut through me like a knife. "My name is Eleanor James. I am 62 years old, and until today I thought I knew my family," I thought bitterly. I glanced towards the faded photographs on the walls, memories that seemed like they belonged to someone else. A time when this house had been filled with laughter tenderly echoed through the rooms, not this chilling silence. The antique furniture I had dusted meticulously now felt foreign, tainted by the betrayal that hung in the air like an uninvited guest. As I fumbled through the will, that dreadful document, despair washed over me like cold water. Each clause I read was a dagger that pierced my already shattered heart, revealing the depths of my husband's betrayal. How had it come to this? How had I, the matriarch who had once held this family together, been left out of my own narrative like an unwanted footnote? The moments of love, generosity, and sacrifice I had shown now stood starkly in contrast to the chill of their indifference. "I can't believe this," I managed to murmur as I felt the heat of humiliation rising within me. I met Margaret's gaze and her lips curled into a smirk that made my stomach churn. In that moment, I felt utterly exposed, a naked truth laid bare before the very people I had devoted my life to. The soft rustle of the will seemed to echo louder than their laughter, portraying my heart's agony that silenced my words. All the years I had spent nurturing my family, sacrificing my ambitions for their well-being, turned to dust in an instant. Thomas, oblivious to my turmoil, allowed Margaret's approval to overshadow the truth of what lay before me. Each laugh he shared with her felt like a stab in my side. The memories flooded in, bittersweet reminders of family dinners, birthday celebrations, and holidays filled with warmth that had somehow dwindled to this bitter silence. The scent of my son's favorite meal, its rich, savory aroma, lingered in my mind like a ghost, reminding me of what I had built only to see it torched by betrayal. The silence in my apartment was deafening now that I was alone with my thoughts. Days had turned into weeks since that dreadful meeting, and I often found myself wandering the empty rooms, recalling the life that once thrived here. I had become a stranger in my own home, reduced to living on the outskirts, dependent on the kindness of those I had once nurtured. How could they do this to me? I whispered to the shadows of my past, echoing with the laughter of my grandchildren, the lightheartedness of days gone by. Yet, amidst the darkness, a flicker of recognition sparked within me. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. The thought reverberated again in my mind, stronger this time. It was a quiet awakening, a realization that perhaps I had been underestimated too often. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror, the deep lines of my face telling tales of strength and endurance, but also of neglect. "Not today," I vowed. I pressed my trembling hands to the side of the ornate window, the whispers of the past beckoning me forward. Faded remnants of love and laughter could not define me. I would not allow them to dictate my future, nor let their arrogance lead to my silence. The battle within me shifted from despair to a quiet, simmering resolve. If Margaret and Thomas believed they could cast me aside like discarded baggage, I would rise from the shadows of humiliation into the light of reclamation. My strength had long been overlooked, but it was there, waiting for its moment to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Days turned into a blur of twilight and dawns, each one indistinguishable from the last as I settled into my new, painful reality. The life I once knew was reduced to quiet echoes within the four walls of my small apartment. The opulence of my late husband's estate now seemed a distant memory, fading like the photographs that hung crookedly on the walls. Each moment spent alone felt like a reminder of what I had lost. My family fractured, the bonds that had once held us together now unraveling in threads of greed and betrayal. I often sank into my chair by the window, the fabric fraying beneath my fingers as I sipped lukewarm tea. The faint sunlight streaming in felt like a bittersweet kiss from a past full of laughter, love, and warmth. Outside, passers-by went about their lives, their joy serving as both a comfort and a torment to me. My small apartment had become a cocoon of solitude, each shadow thrown by the waning light reminding me of the life that had thrived here before the betrayal. Beneath the surface of this cultural isolation lay a flood of memories that seemed to wash over me unexpectedly. I thought back to the numerous sacrifices I made throughout my life, often putting my own desires aside to build a better future for my family. I could almost visualize my husband's face illuminating with pride when we signed the paperwork for our first home. I used to cherish those dreams of filling our abode with children's laughter, family holidays, and life's precious moments. "We'll build a legacy together," he had assured me, his fingers interlaced with mine, drawing me into his vision of our shared future. Yet as years rolled by, those serene visions melted away, lost to the demands of family life and married responsibilities. I had devoted myself to nurturing my husband's ambitions, uplifting him while burying my own ambitions under profound loyalty. The small contributions I made toward our family were always overshadowed by the grandeur of his aspirations. Now, sipping on that same lukewarm tea, I reflected on how a once jubilant atmosphere turned stale as the realization dawned that my family now stood against me. The rich aroma of my son's favorite dish lingered like an uninvited spirit in my fading memories. Thyme-roasted chicken, warm pies cooling on counters, our family table overflowing with laughter. Gradually, those vivid images began to dim, the essence of joy now locked away beneath layers of resentment and despair. I found that reminiscing about our cherished family gatherings, not so long ago they had been filled with life, now felt almost cruel. Each laughter echoed in my heart like a cruel reminder of their disdain. It was in those moments I recognized the quiet shift. I had become invisible, a ghost trapped in the very walls where love had once flourished. In her playful banter with Thomas, Margaret had seamlessly taken my place at the helm of my family's happiness, her sharp words lacerating the bonds that once united us. Yet, amid the longing for the comfort of family, I slowly uncovered the veiled truths I had overlooked. Margaret had rarely felt the warmth of true affection, leaving me to wonder why I hadn't seen her relentless ambition for what it was. She had always worn a polished exterior, but I now saw small cracks in her facade. They were the moments where I could have called her out, moments where I missed telling her that self-centeredness can disguise itself as ambition. Those moments haunted me when I recognized the disregard in her mocking laughter. Flashes of insincerity in her compliments that passed for camaraderie but felt like barbs instead. Evenings became sacred, a time of quiet reflection during which I penned my thoughts into a tattered journal, the pages absorbing my pain. I began to write of what I missed, laughter and light, the scents that used to swirl through my home, reminders of cherished family values. As my pen glided across the page, I transformed sorrow into something tangible, memories that were no longer just weights hanging on my heart, but bricks that, when stacked together, built a wall of resilience. "What have I become?" I wrote one night, steeling myself against the emotional grip of the past. The ink flowed freely, a catharsis that turned the pain into profound strength. I concluded that I had sacrificed too much. I could not allow the remnants of this treachery to lay claim to my soul. With each turn of the page, I embraced an awakening, a new drive that began to swell within me, yearning to erupt with fierce determination. I thought about what I had once loved, cooking, reading, dreaming. Every aspect that made me feel alive had been submerged under the weight of their expectations. And in that moment, something shifted within me. I realized that their dismissal of me could not erase the years of nurturing strength I had built through love and sacrifice. The word family swirled again and again in my thoughts, now twisted into something unrecognizable, a hollow promise that had betrayed me. I could not wallow in resentment. It would only hold me back. Instead, I chose to honor those memories that had once defined me and reclaim the joy they had stolen. With time, I transformed my kitchen once more into a sanctuary, the simmering scents of baked goods no longer bound to crumbling memories, but instead to the warmth of rekindled spirit. I started cooking dishes I had once shared, like a religious rite, letting each flavor awaken dormant joy while indulging in the act of preparation. I pictured my family gathered around the table, not as a captive of their joys, but as an architect of my own. With each meal, I reinforced a critical resolve, not rooted in vengeance but in reclamation. I would no longer be the woman hidden in her own home. I would rise with the strength accrued through years of loyalty. Every chop of the knife, every stir of the pot spoke of my awakening. I realized that these moments of clarity didn't lie solely in the past, but now filled my present with fire. That fire coiled tightly in my chest, awaiting its moment. It fueled me into action, an ember destined to ignite a larger flame. It was time to reclaim my dignity, stepping out of the shadows I had quietly suffocated in for so long. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything, I murmured to the empty room, a spell of assertion that echoed against the walls. My past held lessons in resilience, and I was determined not to remain a victim any longer. Instead, I resolved to build a future on the pillars of integrity and relentless strength. My journey was just beginning. As the days flowed into weeks, I immersed myself in cooking, transforming my kitchen into a sanctuary of healing and renewal. Each dish I prepared echoed the joys of my past, yet was infused with a newfound determination to rediscover my voice. The smells of thyme, rosemary, and cinnamon worked their magic, weaving memories together, reminding me of family get-togethers filled with warmth and laughter. This culinary journey became a crucial part of my reclamation, where I was not just crafting meals, but weaving the fabric of a reclaimed identity. Despite the comfort found in my kitchen, an undercurrent of restlessness still pulsed beneath the surface. I felt an insatiable yearning to confront the ghosts of my past, to face the betrayal that hung over me like a dark cloud. My heart whispered that the real work lay ahead, not just in repurposing my life, but in uncovering the depths of my family history. One rainy Thursday, the sky wept softly, as if echoing my inner turmoil. I decided it was time to venture to the local library, the hallowed ground where I had lost myself as a child among the pages of countless stories. I stepped through the heavy oak doors, greeted by the familiar scent of paper and wood, a comforting embrace that nearly brought tears to my eyes. The library had always been my refuge, a place where the outside world faded away, granting me access to worlds beyond my experiences. I wandered through the stacks, fingers gliding over the spines of books as I searched for something, that elusive piece of wisdom or insight. Then a book beckoned to me from the shelf, its title embossed in gold, The Art of Reclamation. The title resonated within me, reverberating with the social and emotional resonance of my own journey. I felt compelled to pull it from its resting place, the old leather cover soft against my palms. Settling into a quiet corner, I opened the book, my heart racing with anticipation. The pages revealed stories of tenacity and transformation, chronicling individuals who had faced their own trials and emerged empowered. I lost myself in their narratives, each story of survival striking a chord deep within my heart. Here I was, a bright ember ready to ignite, fueled by the knowledge that countless others had walked similar paths. As I read, I recognized a distinct theme threading through the tales. The notion that reclamation wasn't just about recovery, it was about embracing the aspects of oneself that had long been silenced or neglected. It was a revelation that ignited a fierce determination within me. I understood that my healing journey necessitated grappling not only with the pain of betrayal, but also with the legacy I was destined to uphold. After hours lost in that library, I finally returned home, inspired and filled with determination. The rain had stopped, leaving a fresh scent in the air. I took a deep breath, savoring the world cleansed by the downpour. I gathered my thoughts, recognizing that I needed to delve deeper into my own family history, not only to understand where I came from, but to find the values and lessons embedded within the narratives of those who had walked before me. Given the opportunity, I opened the boxes in my small storage room, sifting through a collection of old letters, photographs, and trinkets that represented fragments of my family's past. Amidst the box's contents, I discovered an old, ornate chest, covered in dust and reverently ignored over the years. Its intricate carvings beckoned to me. This was a treasure waiting to be unveiled. As I carefully unlatched the chest, my heart raced with anticipation. Inside, I found several faded letters tied together with yellowed string and sealed with stamps from decades long gone. The very act of unfolding my family's history felt like connecting with the spirits that resided in their words. I read through the letters meticulously, feeling a warmth descend upon me as I absorbed each handwritten note filled with love, wisdom, and stories of survival. One letter particularly captured my attention. It was penned by my great-grandmother, her elegant cursive flowing effortlessly across the pages. "Dear Eleanor," she began, "life may deal us blows that shake our very foundations, but it is in how we rise from those moments that we truly shine. When sadness whispers of defeat, remember to hold fast to that which anchors you and let your heart guide you home." Her words struck me like lightning, igniting a fire of recognition deep within me. I could see my own struggles reflected in her silken prose and realized that the same resilience coursed through my veins. Her stories weren't just echoes of the past, they were blueprints for my future, guides that could help me navigate through the tumultuous waters of betrayal. With renewed vigor, I continued to sift through the letters, allowing myself to become enveloped in the tapestry of my family's narratives. I began to see threads of strength and love that connected me to them, threads that seemed to intertwine with my own circumstances. As though each letter were a stitch in a quilt, they formed a picture of unwavering loyalty, persistence, and unyielding courage. The night wore on, and I found myself in tears. But these tears carried a different weight. They weren't simply sorrowful reflections of loss, but rather cathartic manifestations of resilience awakening from within my core. I understood that I was not just a casualty of betrayal. I was a fierce descendant of those who had fought for their identities, and now it was my turn to galvanize that spirit. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. I whispered to the empty room, surrounded by the tangible remnants of my family's legacy. I realized that, despite their every attempt to erase my voice, the fire ignited by history, love, and perseverance would guide my journey forward. With a newfound sense of clarity, I committed to rewriting my narrative. I would reclaim my dignity and silence the critics who had pushed me into the shadows. I would stand tall, becoming the architect of my own identity built on the values my ancestors held dear, determined to malama, nurture, the legacies that flowed through me. I understood that this journey was not just about revenge. It was about the restoration of love and respect for myself and every woman in my lineage who had suffered in silence. Through my actions, I would honor their stories and breathe life into the lessons they had imparted. As I closed the chest, I felt the tremendous weight of my family's history resting on my shoulders, invigorating me. With faith rekindled, determination blossoming, and the knowledge of my ancestors coursing through my veins, I was equipped to reclaim my power, one step at a time. Letting the words of my great-grandmother guide me, I embraced my purpose and faced the future with clarity and confidence. The next chapter awaited me, and I would write it on my own terms. With my resolve just solidified, I knew my journey had only just begun. The power of my ancestors filled my spirit, buoying me with the strength to confront my past and shape my future. I was ready to uncover the truth, to delve deeper into the dynamics that had led to my betrayal. Silent investigation would be my weapon, and I would wield it with precision. The first step was gathering information, not just about my son and Margaret, but about their motivations, their connections, and any underlying resentment that fueled their actions. I needed to know the players in this drama, from the minor characters to the primary actors. But this would be a delicate operation. I had to maintain a low profile, revealing nothing about my true intentions. I began by reaching out to old friends, former neighbors, and acquaintances who had once been a part of my life. Many had distanced themselves as my family life soured, leaving a trail of whispered judgment in their wake, no doubt influenced by the narrative spun by my son's new wife. Yet my tenacity led me to several who were eager to lend an ear and share their perspectives. The first friend I sought out was Helen, a warm soul with a penchant for tea and stories. We would sit for hours delicately sipping chamomile from tiny porcelain cups, discussing the past while I gently nudged her memory toward my family. "Helen, you remember Jack, my son, right?" I began, pretending to be casual, sipping my tea as if it were any other conversation. "Oh, how could I forget?" She chuckled softly. "He was such a livelier boy, always tearing through the neighborhood like a small tornado. And Margaret, she is quite the character, isn't she?" She didn't notice how my heart sank at the mention of her name. I pressed on, maintaining the facade of casual interest, even as I scanned her face for the truth beneath the surface. "Do you think they're happy?" I asked, my voice steady as I held my breath. Helen paused, her brow furrowing in thought. "Well, dear, happiness is a tricky thing. I have heard whispers, in the quiet corners of the neighborhood, about disagreements, discontent. But you know, every couple faces challenges." The words sat heavy with implication. Leaning in, I asked, "What kind of disagreements?" Helen hesitated, clearly pondering how much to reveal. After a breath, she continued, "It's just a feeling. It seems they argue often, but they behave like everything is fine in public. I wouldn't worry too much, though. Every family has their struggles." I nodded, pushing the insecurity gnawing at my insides away. I had to gather more information. This was merely a piece of a larger puzzle. Helen was a kind ally, but she could only offer so much. Leaving her home with nothing but vague insights felt insufficient, but I wouldn't give up. A sense of urgency propelled me to step out into the world again. I crafted a careful plan to weave through my daily life while observing the dynamics within my family from a distance. Using the quiet yields of my days, I began a methodical process of investigation. I would stroll by the local park where I had once taken my son, pretending to run errands when I was, in fact, hoping to catch a glimpse of their interactions. The first few times were agonizing, for the duo I feared and the love I missed, but each interstate of my heart got a little easier to navigate. The ultimate breakthrough came one Wednesday evening when I spotted them at a local cafe. My heart raced, but the thrill of my investigation outweighed the pang of betrayal. Nestled in a corner booth, Margaret and Jack were engaged in a conversation that, from my perspective, appeared laced with tension. I pretended to read the menu, discreetly observing their body language. Margaret leaned in close, but the smile on her lips felt strained. Jack's facial expression shifted, a frown replacing his previous light-hearted demeanor. The words exchanged remained inaudible, yet the emotions painted a vivid picture of discontent. My heart ached at the mingling sensation of hope and despair. This silent observation reinforced a growing belief that there was more to their story than simple happiness. My previous compassion for my son was slowly being overshadowed by an understanding of the nuances that defined their relationship. It was during one of those soliloquies of lend and withdraw that I caught a fleeting moment. Jack's hand gently brushed aside a napkin to reveal what appeared to be a small, delicate envelope tucked beneath his phone. For a heartbeat, I imagined darting over to retrieve it, but I held my ground, reminding myself of the necessity and patience. Retreating to my apartment that night, I contemplated the implications of little things, the breach of trust I'd once taken for granted. Why and how had this gone so far? I realized I needed to gather clues and assemble them into a clear picture, strengthening the foundation of my investigation. Armed with a newfound sense of determination, I returned home and embarked on the next phase of gathering. I scoured through old photographs, emails, and letters, piecing together the timeline of Jack's life journey. I narrowed my observations, carefully listening to snippets revealed during our interactions, replaying fragments of conversation in my mind. Days turned to weeks as I continued to blend into the backdrop of my family's world, relying on a combination of careful investigation and quiet observation. During this time, I made a grave discovery. I learned of a growing rift between the couple and Jack's estrangement from his old friends, those who had once been my allies too. I realized that Margaret's influence had cultivated a harsh environment, one that stifled Jack's connections and invalidated his past. This lent clarity to my understanding. She was not just a player in his life, but a significant contributor to the tumult swirling around him. I knew now that I had to act. The stakes were higher than I had thought. My approach needed to be calculated and careful. I made a promise to my ancestors echoing through my veins. Their courage had not brought them this far for me to falter. I would weave their legacy into a strategy, one that would reclaim not just my identity but also my son in the process. The next steps loomed ahead, requiring vulnerability, strength, and heart. The silent investigation revealed the truth. Now it was time to act upon it. With the revelations from my investigation swirling in my mind, it became clear that it was time to act. The truths I had uncovered were more than mere insights. They represented the foundation of a strategy designed not only to reclaim my dignity, but also to reconnect with my son, Jack. My plan had to prioritize family and love above all else. I decided to host Sunday dinner, a nostalgic gesture that would serve as a bridge to mend our fractured relationship. I filled my home with the sense of comfort food, preparing dishes that were not only delicious but also rich with memories. Each chop of fresh herbs and stir of the pot was a step toward rebuilding the bonds of love that had become strained. As the dinner approached, a mix of excitement and anxiety bubbled within me. Jack's arrival was critical. I needed to create an atmosphere of warmth and safety. When the doorbell rang, a rush of nerves washed over me as I opened it. Jack stood before me, his eyes reflecting uncertainty, but also a glimmer of hope. "Mom?" he asked, entering cautiously. "Just dinner," I replied, gesturing toward the table set with our favorite dishes. I noticed the hesitance in his posture, but I reminded myself to remain patient. Dinner began with light conversation, the kind that danced over the surface of deeper emotions. As the meal progressed, I decided to gently steer our discussion toward the growing distance I felt between us. "Jack," I began, my voice soft yet firm, "I've noticed things have changed since you and Margaret got together. I want you to know that I'm here for you, and I'm worried." He paused, looking conflicted. "Mom, it's complicated. I don't want to burden you with it." "You could never be a burden," I assured him, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Family means supporting one another, but it feels like you're trying to carry everything alone." He looked down, clearly grappling with conflicting emotions. "Sometimes I think I have to protect her too." "Protect her from what?" I pressed gently, sensing my opportunity. "Jack, I just want to understand what's happening. Can we talk about it?" These words ignited a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "I guess everything just feels so messy right now. I want to keep things peaceful." "I appreciate that, but peace shouldn't come at the cost of your happiness," I said, my voice steady. "You can lean on me. I love you." As the evening unfolded, the conversation deepened for the first time in ages. Laughter returned alongside vulnerability, and I could feel the wall between us beginning to crumble. Yet, as hopeful as I felt, I knew that confronting Margaret remained a crucial step in restoring balance. In the following days, I resolved to meet with Margaret. This encounter would require courage, an honest discussion backed by a blend of empathy and assertiveness. I envisioned a neutral space, and I chose a cozy cafe where both of us could comfortably address the matter at hand. The day arrived, and I felt the weight of anticipation paired with trepidation. I entered the cafe, scanning the crowd until my gaze landed on Margaret. The corners of her mouth downturned slightly as our eyes met. I gestured toward a table, taking a deep breath as I steeled myself. "Thanks for meeting me," I began, my heart racing but determined to keep my tone steady. "I wanted to discuss Jack." "What is there to discuss?" she replied, crossing her arms defensively, as if bracing for a struggle. "I'm concerned about him," I stated, maintaining eye contact, "and the changes I've witnessed in our relationship. I believe we need to collaborate, not compete for his attention." Margaret's initial defensiveness began to waver. "I'm trying to help him grow into himself. He needs support." "Absolutely," I nodded, choosing my words carefully. But it's critical to foster his connections too. I feel that's getting lost among all the pressure. I don't want Jack to feel trapped between us. Her expression softened as she absorbed my words. I hadn't thought about it that way, she admitted, vulnerable for a moment. I cautiously continued, let's address this together. We both want what's best for him. Open communication could help us navigate these complexities. Progress transpired in small increments. She began to share her thoughts and uncertainties. As we talked, a sense of collaboration crept into the air, allowing our perspectives to intertwine. By the end of our conversation, I saw a glimmer of willingness to reconsider her approach. Stepping outside, the cool breeze kissed my skin, and I felt buoyed by the exchange. As I walked away, I knew I had laid the groundwork for a renewed dynamic, both with Jack and Margaret. Each step of this journey was demanding, and as the pieces of my plan began to unfold, I realized that reclamation required courage from all of us. It demanded nurturing our roles within the family and being willing to listen to one another. While my work to rebuild our relationships had just begun, I felt equipped with resilience and hope. I would continue to cultivate love in our lives, a legacy rooted in understanding that could thrive through the challenges ahead. After my conversation with Margaret, the anticipation danced in the air as I waited for the right moment to finally speak with Jack about the simmering tensions that lingered just beneath the surface. I reminded myself of the importance of timing and sensitivity. There was so much at stake, and I knew that my careful approach would be crucial in keeping our connections alive and healthy. A few days later, I invited Jack over for another dinner. This would serve as both an opportunity to reinforce our bond and a chance to gently confront him about the changes I had observed since his relationship with Margaret. As I prepared the meal, I felt a cocktail of excitement and anxiety swirling within me. Everything had to be perfect. When Jack arrived, the evening felt charged with a palpable energy. I focused on keeping the atmosphere lighthearted, sharing small jokes as we settled at the table together. Our laughter echoed through the warm space, but I could sense that the deeper issues still loomed in the shadows. As we enjoyed the meal, I carefully broached the topic of Margaret. How are things between you two? I ventured, curiosity tinged with concern. He sighed, taking a moment to begin. I mean, it's complicated, Mom. She cares about me, but sometimes it feels like I'm losing my own identity. His admission struck a chord. The reality I had feared was unfolding before me. That's understandable. Jack. We all deserve to be our true selves, and that includes being close to the people who matter, I replied. Have you talked to her about how you feel? He hesitated. Not really. She can be. Intense. I don't want to upset her. Jack, it's important to speak your truth, I encouraged gently. You don't have to protect her at the expense of your own happiness. Talk to her. Let her know how you're feeling. It's essential for a healthy relationship. As he processed my words, I watched the conflict play across his face. I recognized the burden he carried, one that I'd experienced myself in the past. You're right. I don't know how to approach it without making it worse. Start small. Communication is a skill, and it takes practice, I assured him. If you approach her calmly, she might surprise you. Our discussions flowed deeper that evening, and with every conversation, I felt hope re-emerging. However, the fear of confrontation lingered. This would not be easy for either of them. I knew they needed to work through their struggles together. The next few days felt like a tightrope walk, each interaction with Jack underscored by the unspoken fears wrapping tightly around both of our hearts. I found myself wondering how Margaret would react to a more candid dialogue. Would she embrace the challenge, or would she withdraw further into her own self-protective shell? The stakes felt higher than ever. After mulling over my thoughts, I decided it was time for direct confrontation with Margaret again. This time, I needed to express the urgency of the situation and how crucial she was to Jack's well-being. I reached out and asked her to join me for coffee once more, hoping the atmosphere would remain amicable. When we met, Margaret seemed more open, her initial defensiveness replaced by a curious willingness to listen. I steered the conversation toward Jack's emotional state, emphasizing how vital it was for him to feel supported and free to express himself. I believe the best way to help him grow is to create an atmosphere where he can truly be himself, I said, keeping my tone calm but insistent. If he feels the pressure to choose between us, he'll be torn apart. Margaret nodded slowly, her gaze fixating on the table as she contemplated my words. I want him to be happy. I really do. But sometimes, I feel like I have to guide him, you know? Guiding him is important, but at what cost? I challenged gently. He needs to know he can rely on you for understanding, not just direction. This will help him thrive in your relationship. We exchanged ideas and slowly unraveled the misconceptions that plagued our communications. As we talked, I could sense her apprehension lessening, her willingness to reassess her approach blossoming into view. It was a small victory, but each shift toward cooperation felt like a step forward. Perhaps the most pivotal moment came when I suggested a family dinner where all three of us could come together, sharing an unfiltered dialogue about our expectations. Margaret seemed intrigued, and I took that as a positive sign. We can take this slow, I reassured them both, but we need to be a team for Jack's sake. It doesn't matter how it begins, as long as we keep talking. As we finalizing the plans for our joint dinner, I sensed the air around us shift, a kind of optimism entwined with uncertainty. I could feel the swells of change stirring, and I chose to focus on that hope, believing that our collective journey toward unity was within reach. When the day of the dinner arrived, I was filled with a sense of anxiety threaded through anticipation. I had prepared a meal that brought together our favorite dishes, and the ambiance was designed to foster warmth and understanding. When Jack and Margaret arrived together, I felt a wave of emotion crash over me. I wanted to create an atmosphere where they could express themselves fully without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. As the conversation unfolded, I facilitated the discussion, reminding both of them to listen actively while sharing their perspectives. There were moments of tension, some awkward silences, but we pushed through, drawing strength from our commitment to one another. Surprisingly, I bore witness to Jack beginning to voice his feelings with newfound confidence. I feel like I'm caught between two worlds sometimes, he admitted quietly. I need both of you, and I don't know how to balance that. I never wanted to come between you two, Margaret replied earnestly. I just want what's best for you, Jack. Her honesty struck a chord within me, and I could see Jack slowly absorbing both our words. As they continued to share and listen, I felt a connection forming, a fragile thread of understanding beginning to weave its way between us. As the evening drew to a close, I stood, my heart brimming with pride. No matter how bumpy this journey gets, remember that we're family, I said, my voice steady. Love will guide us through, but it starts and ends with each of us being willing to communicate openly. Jack nodded, a look of determination on his face. I could see that our efforts were not in vain. This was indeed the beginning of a new chapter. In the weeks that followed that pivotal dinner, the atmosphere within our family began to transform significantly. A newfound openness blossomed, nurtured by the conversations we had shared. I carried the weight of our past struggles lightly on my shoulders, focusing instead on the positives sprouting from our efforts. Jack's demeanor shifted as well. He approached me more frequently, sharing tidbits of his life, his ambitions, his joys, and even his fears. I noticed how he hesitated less, allowing the walls he'd erected around his heart to slowly crumble. It filled me with hope to see him reclaim his voice. One afternoon, as I cleaned up after lunch, he came bounding into the kitchen, a huge smile stretching across his face. I've been thinking about applying for that internship I told you about, he announced, brimming with enthusiasm. Jack, that's wonderful, I exclaimed, wiping my hands and turning to him, the pride swelling within my chest. You've got to go for it. You've got nothing to lose. I know, he continued, excitement palpable. And I figured, if I can talk to you both about everything, why not take this chance too? Encouraged by his boldness, I nodded excitedly. Absolutely. We can practice interviews, and I'll help with your resume. I'd like that, he said, his confidence shining through like a beacon. Maybe I should ask Margaret for some help too, he added, surprising me. That sounds like a great idea, I replied, the warmth of unity enveloping us. Sharing the journey will only strengthen your bond with her. Over time, Jack reached out to Margaret, and I saw them begin to communicate more openly. They shared ideas about the future, discussing joint goals and aspirations. Each of those conversations was a step forward, and the tension that had once threatened to unravel us receded like a distant memory. As the days turned into weeks, I found solace in the rhythm of our daily lives, a rhythm punctuated by warmth, laughter, and a sense of understanding. The three of us began to create new traditions, forging connections through shared experiences. Game nights became our ritual, filled with playful banter, joyful shouts, and sometimes even outrageously competitive matches. One evening, as we gathered around the table with a deck of cards, I looked at them both. Jack laughing, engaging Margaret in banter, her smile lighting up the room. And it was then that I truly felt the ripples of healing weaving through our lives. "Who would have thought?" I teased. "My son and his girlfriend can actually carry a conversation without me being the mediator," I laughed. "Oh, please," Margaret countered, taking the moment to roll her eyes playfully. "You've got nothing to worry about now. We're a team." That thought filled me with warmth, igniting a sense of pride that surged through me. We had begun to expand our family dynamic, moving away from the hurt we had once endured. Love was healing us, stitching our hearts together with care and intention. With spring arriving, I proposed a family outing to take advantage of the sun-soaked days ahead. We decided on a picnic at the park, a throwback to simpler times when Jack was younger. Packing a basket filled with homemade sandwiches, fruits, and laughter, we ventured out together, the world blooming around us. Settled on a blanket under a sprawling oak tree, I watched as Jack and Margaret playfully tossed a ball back and forth. It filled my heart to the brim. My son was reclaiming his joy, and this new chapter in our lives was just beginning. "Mom," Jack called, jolting me from my thoughts. "You should join us. Come on." Perhaps it was the light in his eyes or the buoyancy of the moment, but I felt a laugh bubbling inside me, spilling out as I joined into their unfolding game. It didn't matter if I wasn't the fastest or the best. What mattered was that we were together. In that moment, I felt the last remnants of betrayal and pain dissipate beneath the sun's warmth. Our relationship had been forged anew through vulnerability and trust, transforming into something beautiful. As I watched Jack and Margaret laughing, I understood that love had always been the secret ingredient, a force mighty enough to heal wounds and ignite hope. "Here's to new beginnings," I whispered to myself, a grateful smile gracing my lips. Together, we had been through a storm, but now we stood united and resolute, ready to face whatever came next. This was a new life, filled with promise, and my heart swelled at the thought of the journey still ahead. What would you have done? Drop your answer in the comments and follow this channel. If this story is touching your heart, please consider sending a super chat to support the channel. Are you enjoying this journey with me? Show your support by sending super stickers. Did you feel that sense of justice? Show your appreciation by clicking the super thanks button.